This Week 9 Thursday Night Football Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/SGPN and use code SGPN for a first deposit match up to $100. We're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for player props, parlays, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. Plus, the MMA Gambling Podcast just launched their YouTube channel. To celebrate, we're giving away a MMA Gambling Podcast hoodie. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/MMA hoodie for all the details. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Wednesday, November the 1st, currently 4:09 on the East Coast. Here to get into our Thursday night football player props between the Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And joining me, as usual, to help me break it all down, you guys know him as the Motor King Sports himself. The NASCAR season's winding down. My man's getting a little teary-eyed over there, but it's Rod Villagomez. Rod, what's going on, buddy? How you doing today?
Last race of the season, champion is crowned, and then Cody and I get to take a deep breath before we get back at it in a couple of months for the Daytona 500. So, I'm already missing racing, even though it's not gone yet, but definitely still stoked about football because that was my first love, and I love that you guys still allow me to talk about it like I actually know what I'm talking about.
But also joining us, I got my guy here with me, Chris B. Cap, and me and Chris knocked out the NBA Propcast this morning, so a doubleheader for me and Chris here on Wednesday. But Chris, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm good, good to be back on the show, man. Good to see Rod as well, and good to talk some Thursday night football. We got a interesting game with some injury implications, as we always do. But let's get into it, fellas. Let's see if we can find a way to make some money for ourselves and for the people, man. Let's do it.
Yeah. Obviously, some news, coming out of this. Both of these teams, I guess we should say here. The bigger news, obviously, with the Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill suffering an injury 2 weeks ago, and Wil Levis gets the starting nod last week against the Atlanta Falcons for the Tennessee Titans. And we saw a presser from Mike Vrabel saying that he was going to try to run a 2-quarterback system, but it was pretty much Wil Levis last week for the Tennessee Titans, who led them to a victory as a 2.5-point underdog against the Atlanta Falcons. And what a debut, I guess it was, for Wil Levis. 19 of 29, 238 yards, 4 touchdown passes. 3 of those going to Mr. DeAndre Hopkins, who finished the game with 4 receptions, 128 yards. I guess if you're a Titans fan, maybe a breath of fresh air here at the quarterback position, because this was by far the best quarterback performance of the season for the Tennessee Titans. So, Chris, let me start with you. Are you buying the Wil Levis, I don't want to say hype train, but are you buying into him as being the quarterback that can really turn it around here for the Tennessee Titans and fight for a playoff spot, or do you think it was just a one-off game against the Atlanta Falcons?
I think unless he turns into Steve McNair, absolutely not. I mean, we can only judge him for what he's done, right? But I think there's some correlation. Like, we'll talk about it a little bit more on the show, but I think there's some correlation between some quarterbacks having some success in their first start, because you don't have a big roadmap to kind of scout those players specifically. Then also playing at home. Playing at home it can mean a world of a difference. We saw what was that guy named, Tyler Bignoi, or whatever his name was for the Chicago Bears. Yeah, look exceptional against the Raiders. He goes to the West Coast and just like we expected, loses about 120. So yeah, I think home field has something to do with it, and it's all about the defense that they're playing against as well. When you're playing against a really good defense, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And that I'm not sold on Atlanta's defense. So I do think that while he was able to have some success last week, like, they're not like a top tier, upper echelon defense. They do what they do because they know that they can't give up so many points if Desmond Ridder is going to be a quarterback, because he's not going to score that many. So yeah, those are my thoughts, my preliminary thoughts on seeing Mr. Levis after just 1 week.
Rod, any thoughts on Wil Levis from last week?
crown him a Hall of Famer, put him in the gold jackets already, get him in. I mean, honestly, I love how the whole world just loves to jump on 1 week's worth of a body of work and say, this kid is a future Hall of Famer. He could be. He could not be. I mean, we don't know. We only saw one game out of this kid. And was it impressive? Well, yeah, you throw 4 touchdowns in a game, that's going to turn some heads, right? That's going to be something that puts you on the map almost instantaneously. Will he do it again this week? Highly doubtful. Again, just like Chris was saying, the Steelers defense is a touch better than Atlanta's defense, and they're going to give him some fits. I do think, though, that he can find some success. Keep an eye out on DeAndre Hopkins, who we just saw go on the injury report for, what was it, a toe injury or something like that. But I mean, come on, he got some touchdowns last week. I think he'll be back on the field again this week. I'm not really buying into this too much until I see it again tomorrow. Then I'll start to worry about it a little bit. But again, for Levis, you know, he came into a pretty decent situation as far as he's got the best running back in the league. Maybe not this year, but at least in years past, he's got some stud receivers in his midst. So definitely a good situation to jump into. So we'll see what he does against the Steelers. But like I said, I think there's some success to be had for Levis this week. Again, it won't come as easy. Like Chris said, a home cooking does a lot for you. But I want to see what he does. I mean, I hate to see people fail, so I want to see what he does this week.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of hype coming behind Wil Levis into the NFL draft last year. I think there was rumors that the Colts wanted to take him at number 4, but he fell all the way down the draft board there into the laps of the Tennessee Titans. So we'll see. I mean, again, like you guys mentioned, it's a first game. I think, you know, both of you guys made great points on number 1, home cooking, and then number 2, that you don't have much game film on what, you know, Wil Levis is going to be able to do or not do in the entire league. So definitely intriguing for sure. One of the storylines going into this game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. On the other side, we did see Kenny Pickett take a hit last week, and Mitchell Trubisky had to come in. I haven't seen any indications that Kenny Pickett's going to be missing this game because his props are definitely available, as we'll talk about here in a minute. But I guess, you know, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, treading water, 4-3, not a bad record. Look, I mean, if they get this victory on Thursday night against the Tennessee Titans, who are winless on the road, I should say, by the way, 0-3 on the Titans, Pittsburgh will be right there in that NFC North division with the Baltimore Ravens. And again, all 4 of these teams in the AFC North all have winning records. 4-3 for the Steelers, 4-3 for the Browns, 4-3 for the Bengals. Look out for the Bengals. They're starting to play some good ball. And then obviously the Baltimore Ravens right now sitting at 6-2. So every game going forward is going to matter as we approach the halfway of the season here in the NFL. All right, gentlemen, before we get over to our player props here, let me tell everyone about Prize Picks. With the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the special leagues. A league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, you want to bet on LeBron James, you want to get on Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. Well, you can do that over on Prize Picks. And if you want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, where you can do that. Find them in the community plays under the promos tab on the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Prize Pick even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured for football and basketball games. If you don't have a player, or if you have a player, I should say, who exits the game in the first half and does not return the second half, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So how do we take advantage of this? Players, again, you can sign up with an account, go to prizepicks.com/SGPN and use that promo code SGPN for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com using promo code SGPN. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. And the MMA Gambling Podcast, they are running a contest. The MMA Gambling Podcast just launched their YouTube channel. In honor, we're giving away a MMA Gambling Podcast hoodie to one lucky winner. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/MMA hoodie to submit your entry today, and make sure to subscribe to the MMA Gambling Podcast on YouTube. All right, gentlemen, let's kick it off with our player props here. Rob, why don't you lead us off? First player prop for this Thursday night football game.
All right, so we're talking about Wil Levis, and I did say that there would be a little bit of success that I think he can find against the Steelers defense. And so I'm going to take his receiving or his passing yards, right? His receiving yards. Yeah. He's going to catch a ton of passes from himself.
I've actually seen that multiple. Sorry to interrupt you, but I've seen multiple times this season where like a quarterback has thrown the ball, the defense has deflected, they catch it, and they get credited for the receiving yard. So
didn't Josh Allen get that in a? I think he got one of his own, right?
I won't say Josh Allen. I think Joe Burrow was one too, but I think there's been like 2 or 3 quarterbacks that haven't. But sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, you're good. No, it's a PPR point. I'll take that all day long from a quarterback. But no, so for Wil Levis, his passing yards, I'm not really all that interested in the overall odds for those, because to me, when you look at what his passing yards are listed at right now, they're at, 199.5, right? And this is at -115. But if you look on DK, his passing and rushing yards are set at 214.5 at +100. So give me plus money for 15 more yards. And I think he's going to get all these in the passing game alone. I mean, he got 11 rushing yards last week in the game against Atlanta. I don't necessarily think rushing is a big part of his game, but he got this in the passing game alone last week. I think he can get 215 yards in the passing game alone this week. So if I'm going to get plus money for, again, 15 more yards, I'll take that. Like we talked about, 238 in his debut against the Falcons. Now, I get it. This is a Steelers defense that is pretty much a lot tougher than Atlanta, but Brock Purdy threw for 220 against them. Deshaun Watson threw for 235. Jimmy Garoppolo even threw for 324. CJ Stroud, 306. Lamar Jackson, 236. Rams had Matthew Stafford throw 231. And then last week, it was Trevor Lawrence with 292. You sensing a pattern here? Every quarterback they've faced has gone for more than 215 yards in the passing game alone. So as far as rushing is concerned, I mean, obviously you get Brock Purdy with 20 rather. Deshaun with 22, Lamar 45. So again, I'm not really factoring the rushing into this so much as I am saying I think that Wil Levis is at least going to get 215 yards passing in this game, which gives you plus money. And I mean, you're not paying any juice whatsoever at that 199.5. So you get way better value taking his passing and rushing yards at 214.5 than you would going at the easy. I mean, 199 seems like a very easy number for this guy to hit this week. So I'm going to give him 215 at least to get there. And you look at what Pittsburgh has done so far as passing yards are concerned. They're giving up 245 yards a game in passing, which by my last count, more than 215. So I like his chances to get 215 here. So give me Wil Levis passing and rushing yards over 214.5 at +100 on DK.
I think that for Wil Levis, you also take a look last week. He did have 7 attempts on the ground for 11 yards. I think some of those were also kneel downs at the end of the game for the Tennessee Titans, but I don't think he'll be afraid to run the football here either. He did have a long of 5 yards. I mean, again, it's not against it's a very small sample size here but I mean, you rattle off the numbers of what quarterbacks have been able to do against the Steelers' lack of defense, especially in the passing game. And some of the quarterbacks that you did name, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is not having a great season. He had 324 passing yards. And again, if there's a game script where the Titans do get behind, obviously you have to throw the football so he can accumulate the yards that way as well. So especially at this number at 214.5, I don't hate this at all. Chris, any thoughts on Wil Levis passing and rushing over 214.5?
I mean, I think he'll have the ball a lot to Rod's point. Pittsburgh offense is not impressive. Like, we know that they're not really scoring the ball a lot. So I think it'll be we see the total, it's already dropping in this one. And so this sets up to me to be the type of game where we see a bunch of yards, but we don't see any points, right? So I would agree with Rod. I was actually kind of taken away just a tad bit by how bad Pittsburgh pass defense has been. I thought that they were like, a really good pass defense, but Pittsburgh is a bend but don't break defense. They give up a ton of yards, but they don't give up a ton of points. So I could absolutely see Mr. Levis getting to this number tomorrow night.
All right, Chris, take us up to your first player prop, man. What do you got?
So sticking with quarterbacks, I'm going the opposite way. Just looked up the news just to make sure, and Kenny Pickett is off the injury report. He was a full participant. He should be available tomorrow. Passing yards are sitting at 208.5. I got to take the over. I absolutely have to take the over here. So starting with the Titans defense, they've allowed every quarterback that they face that's actually played a full game, because it's a couple quarterbacks that they faced that didn't finish the game. But every single quarterback has cleared this number outside of Joe Burrow in week 4. This team is allowing 255 yards per game throughout the air on 32 attempts per game. And you look at Pickett, he's been shaky, to say the least. I think we would all agree with that. But he is 3 for 3 to this number, to the over, in all of his home games. And it's been against some pretty elite defenses as well. When we're talking about Rod's 49ers, we're talking about the Cleveland Browns that don't give up a bunch of yards, and the Baltimore Ravens, probably, the 3 best defenses in the NFL, arguably. So if he can do it against them, I think that he could definitely do it against Tennessee. I think Tennessee's role here will be to, as much as they possibly can, limit the rushing attack. We talked about Pittsburgh not having a strong rushing attack last week. So I think Pickett should be able to throw for, this number is 208 at its lowest. I see it at Bet Rivers at -114, but it's up to 212, 213 in some books as well. So, jump in wherever you feel comfortable, but 208 is such a low number in today's, extremely high passing league. And I do think some of it is due to injury. So we may see this number creep up just a tad bit once people understand that he will be available for this game.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said there. Again, in fact, both of these past defenses have been terrible this season. You kind of go through the numbers of passing yards allowed. You guys laid out the case, yards per completion. Both these teams are well below league average. Yards per pass attempt allowed. Both these teams below league average, bottom 4, in fact. So I think there should be some opportunities for not only big plays, but for these receivers to rack up yards as well. And for Pittsburgh, they also have been very good on the ground either. We'll get to that later, I'm sure. But which kind of leads me into my first player prop, kind of going off of what Chris mentioned on Kenny Pickett. I took his longest completion to go over 34.5 yards in this game. So you take a look at what the opposing quarterbacks have done against the Tennessee Titans defense. And I feel like I talked about this a few weeks back when I think I was backing Desmond Ridder at that point, if I'm not mistaken. But, it was Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow wasn't able to get there. But Joe Burrow had a long completion of 17 yards against the Titans. But listen to this list of the other quarterbacks. Derek Carr, 59, longest completion of 59. Deshaun Watson, 43. Lamar Jackson, 38. Justin Herbert, 42. Tyler Heinicke last week in the second half, 52-yard completion. And then Anthony Richardson, way back early in the season, had a long completion of 38 yards. So right now, this number is sitting at 34.5 for Kenny Pickett in this game. You got Deontay Johnson back. We know he can be a great down-the-field threat for this team. You also have George Pickens, a guy that can, again, make those spectacular catches down the field. And more times than not, we've seen Kenny Pickett have long completions this season. He had 39 against the Rams, 41 against the Ravens, 72 against the Raiders, 71 against the Cleveland Browns. Fell a little bit short in week 1 against the 49ers, where he had 31. And then against the Texans, he had 32. But again, the secondary of the Tennessee Titans, they are giving up those long, big plays. I like Kenny Pickett's longest completion over 34.5 yards here. Rod, any thoughts on this one?
Well, he said he was good to go. He said he is for sure going to play. And I think that means that he probably feels like he can do anything that he's asked to do, which is throw the deep ball. And that's what Pittsburgh I think, honestly, if you can't move the ball on the ground, you have to try and become a vertical team, because that's the only way that you're going to end up moving the ball at all. So they've got the receivers to do it, right? They've got Deontay Johnson back at whatever speed he's going to be at, you got Pickens as well. So, they got to try something. They're a 4-3 team. And what's crazy about these guys, they're probably going to, get their one game above 500 so that Mike Tomlin continues his streak. And that's probably where they're going to end the season, right?
Yeah, I agree. Chris, any thoughts on Kenny Pickett's longest completion? Goes kind of hand in hand with what you were laying out.
Yeah, I won't regurgitate all that, but if you remember at the beginning of the season, this was something that was a cash cow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we mentioned it on the show, but I know we talked like we didn't give it out. I don't know if anybody gave it out, but against this Tennessee Titans defense, man, that you definitely want to kind of similar to my Commanders. You want to attack their secondary versus the front seven that they have. In the rushing attack. That's where they've been strong over the last couple of years, even outside of the season. So yeah, long reception. We've seen Pickett do this against much better defenses and much better defensive backs, in my opinion. Dating back to another similar spot, like I think it was a Thursday night football spot where it was him versus Monday night football spot with him versus the Browns. He threw the one pass to Pickett, boom, down the field. There you go. So I like him,
Yeah. All right. Before we get over to round 2 of our player props, let me tell everyone about Hall of Fame bets. Win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame bets, a sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NFL, NBA, MLB, and soccer bets with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame Bet's revolutionary parlay optimizer tool to get hit rates broken down by leg, as well as an expected probability for the entire parlay. Sort all players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame bets. All right, gentlemen, let's get over to round 2 of our player props. Chris, lead us off.
Okay, so we are going to go. I think this may be a sneaky one. We're going to go Mr. Henry, King Henry, but I'm not looking at his rushing yards. I'm actually looking at his receiving yards. Over 12.5, minus 110 on BetMGM. I think his number also probably goes up just a tad bit, but when I was looking through the data, I had no idea Pittsburgh was giving up that many receiving yards to running backs. It absolutely made me want to, just kind of, the spot kind of jumped out at me. So each running back that Pittsburgh has actually faced has gone over at least 13 receiving yards outside of week 7 against the Rams when Henderson wasn't able to do so. But I do expect Levis to, complete a bunch of dump down passes, right? Like we know Pittsburgh has a pretty good front seven, so I do expect them to be able to put pressure on him. And I also don't expect the Titans to kind of leave him out to dry with, trying to force the ball down the field. So I like the dump offs. The dump off situation, especially in a hostile environment. We also got to remember, not capping the props, but capping the game. We got the Pittsburgh Steelers as a home dog here, so that's something to kind of take into consideration. Is where Mike Tomlin and his team typically steps up and they win the game somehow, some way. We've seen it against Cleveland, we've seen it against Baltimore this season. So just some things to kind of take into consideration when you're looking at this prop. Also, just looking at Derrick Henry. He has at least 13 receiving yards in 3 straight games. And sprinkle on top with Levis, because he was the quarterback last week, he actually saw 4 targets last week, which is the most that he's seen so far this season. Derrick Henry himself has 13 receiving yards in 5 of the 7 games. So that's a pretty good hit rate. And I do think, like I said, Levis, so he'll dump down to him a little bit more. We only need a couple catches here. For Derrick Henry, maybe only 1 catch for him to go over this 12.5 receiving yards, and I love that the odds weren't juiced in this one, just minus 110 as well over on BetMGM. I think that number is still currently available.
Yeah, I think I was also on this train as well as far as receiving yards, and I'll go give it out as well. I took Tajay Spears to go over on his longest reception as well at 9.5, and I think that you take a look at what he's done over the past couple of weeks here, coming out of the backfield for the Tennessee Titans. And right now, if you take a look, not really too much involved in the running game, but if you take a look at his passing game, last week he got 3 receptions off of 4 targets, only resulted in 9 yards. But prior to that, against the Ravens, 48 yards, 35 yards against the Indianapolis Colts on 5 targets. So he's averaging about close to 3.5 to 4 targets per game, but he's also getting long receptions. So I played both. I'll give out his receiving yards at 15.5. I'm more comfortable with that. But like I mentioned, against the Ravens, 48, 35 against the Colts, 18 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Only got 9 yards last week against the Lions. Against the Falcons. But the targets have been there for Tajay Spears out of the backfield. So I'm expecting, like you mentioned, some dinking and dunking if things don't develop down the field for this Titans receivers than this when you see Derrick Henry and you see guys like Tajay Spears as well involved. And like you mentioned, Chris, is also that what stuck out to me is the number of receiving yards that the Steelers are allowing to opposing running backs through the air. They're also bad on the ground as well, where they're allowing 115 yards per game, and opposing teams are averaging 26 attempts per game. But I did take a look at Tajay Spears to go over 15 and a half yards here through the air here. Rod, both Chris and I on running backs to go over on their passing yards against the Steelers defense. Can you talk us off?
No, because neither one of them are doing very much on the ground. I mean, Derrick Henry's doing okay things, but he's not doing Derrick Henry things, right? He's not the 300-yard monster that he is each and every week. So he's got to find production somehow. And if that means catching the ball in this game, that means catching the ball in this game. So I think they're going to have to get him involved. And obviously he's strong enough to carry everybody with him over this in one catch. So I like that. And then same thing with the Steelers, right? I mean, Chris talked about it earlier. Their running game has been pretty much dismal the entire season. So the only way to get these backs involved nowadays is to throw them the ball on a screen or just in the flat on a short pass to try to get them involved, to get them space to actually gain some yards on a carry or a catch.
All right, Rod, take us over to player prop number 2. What do you got?
All right, BetMGM has these fun little, I don't want to call them parlays, but how about their combined props? So I've got one that I like. It's Deontay Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins over 10.5 combined receptions. This is a plus 105 over on BetMGM. You're talking about, well, first of all, the main receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, if he plays, keep an eye. Again, like I said, if he doesn't play, then obviously this is not going to be a thing. But you've got one of this guy's main targets now. Last week he was targeted 6 times, caught 4 of those. Before that, he had 11 targets against Indy, caught 8 of those. It was a down day against Baltimore. He only had a catch there, but 4 catches against Cincinnati, 3 against the Browns, 4 against the Chargers, 7 against the Saints earlier in the season. So, I mean, the targets are there, right? He's not converting the catches nearly as much as we want him to, but I still think a 4 or 5 catch game out of DeAndre Hopkins will help get us over this hump. Definitely want more like 6, I think, because I think DeAndre Hopkins would be the one to get us over this mark, because for Deontay Johnson, he averages about 4 catches a game coming into this season now since he got back. But last week is really what's telling me that I think we're going to go over this. He had 14 targets. He caught 8 of them. The week before he had 5 catches and then 3 in his first game back first game back, but the first game of the season against San Francisco. And 3 catches against San Francisco is almost like 10 catches against any other defense. Oh, wait, no, not lately. The secondary's been Swiss cheese. But again, 8 catches last week for Deontay Johnson. I think he's within the realm of 5 to 6. And I think Hopkins about the same range, 5 to 6. So if we're giving both of them, 5 to 6 catches, I think 11 is within our reach. So if you put those together, and hell, both of these guys are capable of doing this all by themselves, right? Catching 11 balls all by themselves, especially when you're getting targeted 14 times in a game, or 10 times in a game. So I like this. I like the combination of the two, and you don't have to have just one player go over certain. You can combine both of them for plus 105 at BetMGM.
Yeah, I mean, maybe something Will Levis found with DeAndre Hopkins, who up until last week was having a pretty subpar season, or not up to the standard we've seen what DeAndre Hopkins is definitely capable of. So I think again, you mentioned also Deontay Johnson coming back, and he's definitely going to help the offense of the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's no question about it. And the targets were there last week from as well. 14 targets, 8 receptions. To go back to the first week, 5 receptions off of 6 targets. So again, these 2 guys are both target machines for their respective teams. So I can definitely see in a world where this can get over the number for their receptions combined here, Chris.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think when we talk about both of these rushing we talk about Derrick Henry on the road. That's where he's kind of struggled at the most. So I do think that they're gonna have to pass the ball just a tad bit more. And we've been referencing this for a couple of weeks now. Pittsburgh their rushing game has just been abysmal of late. So love it, Rod. Love this one as well. You always find the sneaky ones, right? I like this one.
All right, let's get over to round 3 of our player props. Rod, why don't you lead us off?
All right. Well, then I will take DeAndre Hopkins. I'm pretty heavy on DeAndre Hopkins. I didn't realize that I was going to be this heavy in it. 35 or more receiving yards in each half. This is actually at 7-1 on FanDuel. I mean, listen, last week he did this on one catch in both halves. So, I mean, he's done this in one catch on in either half on a lot of his games. But, I mean, 35 yards for a guy, like we said, who gets targeted as much as he does. And now maybe Levis has found something with him, because if this was Tannehill last week, maybe I wouldn't be so heavy on it, but it just feels to me like Levis is going to have to lean on his number one receiver. And I mean, I could sit here and give you all the stats to back this up as far as how many times DeAndre Hopkins is at 35 yards in either half, which is actually a couple of 3-4 games here in this, but really it doesn't matter, because last week is what it does matter. And he's done that on one catch, like I said, in both halves. So I think he can get it done again. I think this is a easy number to hit in both halves. I think he's going to at least get 70 yards in this game for sure, if not 100 in this game, if he's healthy, obviously, if his toes not hurting him too much. But, 35 and a half, it doesn't sound like it's that difficult. And I had to triple check that number was right, because 7-1 for this, that is a very generous number. So if you can find that on FanDuel, please do, because that is, I'm not making this one up, Munaf, like people have told me that I was before.
I've seen DeAndre Hopkins do this all throughout his career when he was with Houston. I mean, the guy he has some of the best hands in the entire league. There's no question about it. There's few and far between times where he actually does drop the ball. And we saw last week what DeAndre Hopkins is capable of doing. And maybe, like I mentioned earlier, I think maybe him and Wil Levis have found something. And again, this is a game where the Titans are trailing, that Wil Levis have to throw the football, and who better to throw it to than DeAndre Hopkins. So that seemed like a big number here, to asking him to get 35 in each half. I mean, maybe sometimes you get off to a slow start here, but I think that if the Titans don't have success, I think and the Steelers will have success, they got to throw the football here, because both of these past defenses are absolutely atrocious thus far this season. Chris, you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, just that it reminds me a little bit of Baker Mayfield to Mike Evans. I was betting on the under for that to happen this year, and lo and behold, Mike Evans has turned back the hands of the time, and kind of catching passes, and they're being touchdown passes at that. So just really good wide receivers in my estimation, not playing with the greatest quarterbacks, but still being able to tell their quarterback, hey, can you just throw it up and give me a chance? And I promise you, I'm gonna catch a couple. So I couldn't talk right off of this one either. We know that, like you said, you watched this in Houston for a long time, and it could just be one catch per half, and that's really all you need. So I like this one, Rod, especially at 7-1.
I'm taking a screenshot so you guys know I'm not crazy. I'm gonna send that to you guys.
Man, why don't you try to see if you can upload it here on the stream, and I'll try to pop it up if you can.
Okay.
Chris, take us over to player prop number 3, man.
So sticking with, I actually like Rod mentioned Levis and liking Hopkins in this spot. I really like Pickett to Pickens. I know you talked about this one earlier in the season, but Pickens' line is a tad bit too low for me. I know Pickett's not the greatest quarterback in the world, but Pickens, he's a boom or bust type guy. So I mean, the receiving yard number is only 52.5 over on Bet Rivers at -115. So you're not laying that much juice. And like I said, boom or bust type guy. I do expect this. Against this defense, I do expect them to have some success. Even if Kenny Pickett is not quite 100%, even though he is kind of trending in that direction, I think it only helps this prop even more. You look at Pickens, 4 games so far this season, he's gone over 53 yards. He leads this team in receptions. He leads the Titans, and the Titans give it up. They've been giving it up all year to wide receivers. So that's another reason why I kind of like him in this spot. I do think that he's a better receiver than he's getting credit for, just because of the quarterback that he's playing with. You just go through and kind of look at the numbers. In 8 weeks so far, this Tennessee Titans defense is giving up 53 yards to 10 different receivers. If you just go through and count through the box score. So that's more than one per game. And if anybody's on this team is on his Pittsburgh team is going to have more than 53 receiving yards, it's going to be Pickens. I can't name another guy. So I got to take my chances with this one. Like I said, boom or bust, but give me Pickens to go over 52.5 receiving yards. This could also come in one play. So I like Pickens a lot in this spot. Pickens is what I'm trying to hit tomorrow, fellas.
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk you off of George Pickens. Again, I took the over for a season-long number to go over. He's at, or I should say 522 receiving yards thus far this season. And again, he's a guy that is a huge down-the-field threat. We talked about the 71-yard catch he had against what was the Cleveland Browns last week, 22-yard reception, 31, 41, 32. So almost more than half of his yardage are coming on one play for George Pickens. And again, when you talk about this wide receiving group of the Steelers, it's pretty much Pickens and it's pretty much Deontay Johnson. So again, I keep on harping on this stat. I want to see what the game plan is going to be tomorrow for both of these coaches, because if they recognize that both these pass defenses are terrible, we should see some big numbers from these wide receiving group. Hopefully for our sake and for Chris's prop bet as well, it is going to be, actually from a yardage perspective, for George Pickens. And then we want Deontay Johnson also eating up the receptions as well in this game. So I do love that as well. For my third player prop, I'm going to say on that side of the football end team, I should say, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm looking at their tight end right now, Connor Hayward, who's filling in right now for Pat Freiermuth, who has been put on the IR and is injured. I see his receiving yards at 22.5 in this game. I'm going to take the over. There's been a very fine line over the last 3 weeks for Connor Hayward, because he's at 23, 23, and 24. He has accumulated, 13 targets over the last 3 weeks, and those have turned into 10 receptions for Connor Hayward. But I think what really sticks out to me as well is how bad the Tennessee Titans defense is against the tight end position. So thus far this season, they're allowing around 4 to 4.5 receptions per game to that tight end position on 5.71 targets. But what really sticks out is the yardage. 46.57 yards they're allowing to that tight end position. And every single one of these tight ends, except for the collective group of the Cleveland Browns, went over this projection. In that game, David Njoku only had 4 receptions for 20 yards. So only fell 3 yards short of this number. Other than that, Saints tight ends, 36 yards. That was all Juwan Johnson. Gerald Everett, 3 receptions for 47 yards. As a group for the Bengals, 24 receiving yards. As a group, 3 tight ends for the Colts, I should say, 48 receiving yards. Mark Andrews, 4 for 69. In the last week, we saw Kyle Pitts go for 3 for 35. So, Connor Hayward, I like the number here at over 22.5. Again, very fine line because he has gone over this number in 3 straight games, but barely by half a yard. Hoping that the Titans defense forgets about the tight end position here, and that Connor Hayward has at least a 23-yard receiving night for this Steelers offense, I should say. Rod, any thoughts on this one?
Steelers have always loved their tight ends. That's the thing about this offense. It doesn't matter if it was Ben Roethlisberger throwing to Heath or any number of solid tight ends that they've had over the years. So unfortunately, yeah, it sucks that Muth is out. He's a really good tight end, but next man up in this offense. And this is a very tight end friendly offense under Mike Tomlin. It always has been, it always will be. So yeah, I'll take any tight end prop with the Steelers.
Chris, any thoughts?
And then the opposite of what Rod is saying is that we talk about the Titans defense. They're just giving it up, right? That's how you want to attack them, is through the air. So absolutely, I like this one a lot. And I think that you found some value just because, like you said, he hasn't, necessarily, he's not necessarily the starter. So you get some value there too as well, with that number probably being a tad bit lower.
I love it. All right, guys, let's get into our touchdown scores for this game. Total sitting at 36.5, but maybe the books are not expecting a lot of points in this game. But these Thursday night football games, at least over the past couple of weeks, have been flying over the total here. I know the other primetime games on Sunday night football and Monday night football have been going under the total, but Thursday night football, sneakily, these numbers have been, we've been seeing a lot of touchdowns, I should say, put it that way. So let's get into our touchdown score prop bets. Chris, lead us off, man. What do you like this week?
So I talked about them already, but I gotta keep backing them because who on Pittsburgh else can score? Give me George Pickens at plus 210. He leads the team in touchdowns and receptions and yards. So I do think, if you want to attack Tennessee, you want to do it through the air, of course. And I do think that Pickens can get in the end zone. So at plus 210, I do not hate that number. I think the only reason it is so high is because Pickett only throws a couple touchdowns he only has a couple to his name. I want to say like 5. But majority of those have gone to Pickens. So I like Pickens at plus 210. Opposite side of the ball, Raj guy. I think you got to continue to ride the train of DeAndre Hopkins off the strength of last week, just to kind of figure out if that was real or not. And if Tennessee's going to score, how is that going to be? It's either going to be DeAndre Hopkins or most likely, Derrick Henry. So give me D Hopkins, especially with what he was able to do last week, just kind of riding that energy at plus 210 as well. Love that we're getting that number there. We're going to find out if it's a real connection, this week. And then honorable mention, I couldn't get there with this one because the odds are horrendous. I was expecting at least plus 4-1 or 4-1. But Pittsburgh defense, we know that when they're in these really close games, especially as a home dog, that's when you typically want to buy on them defensively because they get some kind of block punt for a touchdown, some kind of interception return for a touchdown, or a scoop and score. So Pittsburgh defense only plus 280. I do not like that number, but it would be an honorable mention for me.
I see plus 650.
You see plus 650
for Pittsburgh defense score?
Where at? Because I couldn't find that. Okay, yeah, sign me up. I'll be on DraftKings plus 650 is what said for Pittsburgh defense. I got to go back and check because I'm like plus 280. That seems a little off to me. They just must know that Pittsburgh defense is going to score. But yeah, if I can get it 6-1, I'm there.
Possibly something we saw when they played the Cleveland Browns. I think it was their first pass that Deshaun Watson had turned into a pick 6 for that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. But yeah, I see a plus 650 right now on DraftKings. Rod, who's finding the end zone this week?
Yeah, actually, I see it too as well. So you're not crazy. Also, plus, just to back it up, there it is. DeAndre Hopkins, 35 receiving, that plus 700. Not crazy there. But let's stay on DeAndre Hopkins because I did not wake up meaning to be in love with him, but I am. But if that toe does not keep him off the field, I'll take him as to score first or last, right? This is at 4-1 on DraftKings. You can get him to score either first or last. Now, the great thing about this is that if somebody else scores first, okay, cool. You still are in line to have him score last. So if he gets that first score, you're cashing early. If you have to wait till the end of the game for him to catch the last touchdown pass, then that's fine. But I still think if he's going to score early or he's going to score late. He's either going to be in line to get the big play at the beginning of the game for Tennessee, or it's going to take him catching a big touchdown pass at the end of the game in order to win this game or to even come within, a touchdown or a field goal of winning. So, like I said, it's the guy Chris said that's going to score for Tennessee, right? So it's just a matter of can he do it again, and can he do it first, or can he do it last in this game? And at 4-1, I'll take that chance.
All right, love it, man. Hopefully it's another week where DeAndre Hopkins has another 3 touchdowns. Hopefully it's a first one or a last one for sure. Anytime I see plus odds on Derrick Henry, I got to take it. I know it's a chalk of the week, but he's been alternating between scoring a touchdown and then not scoring a touchdown. So last week, didn't get one in the end zone against the Falcons. He did against the Ravens. That's my wonderful handicap as far as touchdown score. But we mentioned, right, they're really struggling against the running back position are the Pittsburgh Steelers. And going back to Chris's point is that he can get this through catching a pass as well and finding the end zone and getting into the end zone that way. So when we talk about running backs, we always have that option, whether running it or having a receiving touchdown as well. So I took Derrick Henry plus 130. Love the D-Hop angle as well. 2-1. I mean, for any time touchdown score, come on, sign me up for that. And I'll double down on my guy Connor Hayward, man. I know the tight ends haven't scored a touchdown yet, but at plus 360, I'll give that out as well. Hopefully, it's a 24-yard touchdown pass for Connor Hayward, and I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone there. So Connor Hayward plus 360, DeAndre Hopkins, I think consensus team right here at 2-1. And then Derrick Henry to find the end zone plus 130. Derrick Henry for 2+ touchdowns tomorrow is plus 750. So I don't hate that number either for Derrick Henry. All right, guys, let's close out this episode strong. Let's get into our best bets here for the Thursday night football game between the Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Rod, lead us off. Best bet.
I think my best bet's my first one. Wil Levis over 214.5 pass and rush yards at plus money. So yeah, again, I just think he's going to get at least 215, if not more. So yeah, sign me up for that one.
If I see a world on the box score at the end of this game that there's more rushing attempts and passing attempts for both these coaches, they should be fined. Chris, best bet for this Thursday night football game. What do we got?
I would also agree with that, because I'm also, my best bet is going to be a passing one as well. Like Rod said, other side of the ball, Pickett. Like I said, he's going over this number against the elite defenses. He has to be able to get it against Tennessee, right? We're talking about upper echelon versus the bottom of the barrel when we talk about Tennessee being ranked in the bottom 10 in a bunch of different statistical categories. So give me Pickett over 208.5 passing yards. I do think that Pittsburgh is kind of abandoning that rush. Rushing attack, and Tennessee's good at stopping the run as well. So pick it through the air, hopefully to Pickens, touchdown, a whole bunch of yards. I need him to look like throwback Dan Marino or something out here tonight, tomorrow night. So give me Pickett over 208.5 passing yards is my best pick.
You knew that Tom Brady to Randy Moss connection. It was like 3 receptions, 164 yards, and 3 touchdowns for Pickett to Pickens in this game. All right, my best bet. I'm gonna go with Connor Hayward. I think that's sneaky here. Over 22.5 receiving yards. Again, the tight ends have had a lot of success against the Titans this season. So I think that can continue here for Connor Hayward. Again, the targets have been there. He's done this in 3 straight games, but again, a razor thin margin there because he's gone over this projection by half a yard. And I think pretty much the book is just putting it at 22.5. And like Rod mentioned, that historically we've seen the Steelers love to get their tight ends involved in the passing game. So hopefully Pickett throws a little bit towards my guy Connor Hayward, but hopefully a majority of that does also go to George Pickens in this game as well. All right, gentlemen, that's another week of Thursday Night Football player props in the books, week 9. Anything else, Rod, we want to mention before we get out of here?
No, sir. Just, again, catch the last week of NASCAR on the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. F1 still got some time left. But, yeah, we're saying goodbye for the regular season. And, get to focus more on this and maybe some other motorsports that I can find and dig up through the winter.
Chris, anything else, my friend?
Nah, man. Same thing as always. Bet responsibly. Enjoy the game for sure. I think it's going to be a pretty good game. We do got a close spread here, even though we might not see a lot of points, or we might just be thinking that we're not going to see a lot of points and then see a lot of points. So, enjoy the game, gamble responsibly. Hopefully we gave us some winners, and definitely check me out on Twitter. Me and Munaf, firing off. We feel like we're doing a whole bunch of stuff right now because we are. But at Crispy Cap in 2 P's, 2 N's. And best of luck to everyone.
Yep, 100%. Make sure to follow my guys here on Twitter or X, whatever you may want to call it. You can follow me on Twitter at SportsNerd824. We'll be back Friday for our Week 9 Sunday game player props, so look out for us then. And again, make sure to subscribe to the NFL Gambling Podcast YouTube channel. We'll be going live for the Propcast on that channel whenever we do our Propcast shows here. All right, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.